right, today we're going to talk about the concept of multi-factor investing. You wrote an article on it, and we'll sort of get into the details there. But before we do that, let's just, I think, define some of the terms and things that, that we want to discuss when talking about factor-based investing. So when talking about factors, what we're really talking about is selecting stocks that have certain fundamental or price-related characteristics that over long periods of time have been able to show and produce returns in excess of the market. Now, when we're talking about the market in this case, we're really talking about things like the S&P 500, which tend to be market cap weighted indices that, weight the largest stocks the most. Larry Swedroe, Director of Research for Buckingham Strategic Wealth, who's probably one of the most knowledgeable guys on factor investing and really a thought leader in the space. He wrote a book titled Your Complete Guide to Factor Investing. And what he did in there is he outlined the characteristics that he believed, and I think that make a lot of sense, for something to become a factor. So the first thing he looks for is persistence. So does the factor hold across long periods of time and in different economic regimes? The next thing he wanted to see was pervasiveness, that means basically does it hold across countries, regions, sectors, and even asset classes. He looked for robustness, which basically, in this case, it's, there's various definitions, whether the value premium is measured by price to book, earnings, or price to cash flow. So is the factor robust over different types of metrics? Next, he wanted to see if these factors were investable. So it's not just like on paper. Can they actually be implemented in the real world with actual portfolios? And then lastly, is the factor intuitive? Does it make sense? Is it logical? Is it based on something that sort of is sound economic theory? And so that's, at a high level, that's an overview of what a factor is. I thought it was important just to discuss that. And Jack, what I wanted you maybe to try to talk about is, what are some of the more popular factors out there that are used in investing today? And then we'll talk about the concept of multi-factor investing and the pluses and minuses of that.
Yeah, when you look at factors, I think if you look at those definitions you put out, I think there's two factors that rise above all the other ones. And those two factors, at least if you look through all of history, are value and momentum. And they have all of those characteristics you listed. And, value obviously is just buying something that's cheap relative to some metric, whether that's cash flow or earnings or whatever. And momentum is that stocks that have gone up in the intermediate term tend to continue going up for a period of time. And so both of those have worked really well over time. And I think, there's pretty good consensus that if you were going to look at two factors that are above all the other ones, it's value and momentum. And then you have some other factors that have also worked over long periods of time. You have quality, buying high quality companies, whether that's and quality is probably the toughest one to define because there's so many different ways people define it. But, companies that have high return on capital, or companies that have consistency in their earnings, or, some people will say companies that have low debt. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to define quality, but quality has a lot of evidence to support it over a period of time too. And then the fourth is low volatility, which is that stocks that are less volatile than their counterparts actually tend to produce, at the very least, better risk-adjusted returns, and at the most, actual excess returns. So in a lot of cases, you get a better return with less risk by investing in low volatility stocks. So I think there's been articles that have identified 300 or 3,000 or a million factors, but there really are four that rise above the rest, and I think those are the four of them.